parents tell me time and time again, until we change the child's vision, we didn't really make the leaps and bounds. Once we change the child's vision, we really changed the whole path of their future. So that was so remarkable. I just had to keep doing this.
Welcome back to A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. I'm really excited today. We're going to be talking to Patti Andrich, and she is someone that I had the honor and privilege of meeting at our TACA conference in California. And I learned so much from Patti, and I cannot wait for Patti to share what she does and how she helps all of us in our autism community. So welcome, Patti.
Well, thank you, Bridget. This is one of my favorite things to do, is just to share my passion and inspiration with others. I love being on podcasts. So this is a nice opportunity. And this is my first video podcast. So I've done audio. So this is really a special treat because I just love that visual connection that's there. So very nice.
Yes.
Thanks
yes.
again.
Me too. Me too. Well, let's start with your background and how you became a vision therapist who treats children and adults, I want to emphasize, and adults with sensory and motor processing disorders.
Yeah, so Bridget, not unlike you, I was also a former teacher. So my first degrees are in education and special education, and specifically adapted physical education. So I would go into classrooms and help modify the environment to help the inclusion efforts. And in physical education, I would help to bring in the child with special needs into the mainstream environment and help the teacher really understand the sensory needs, the motor needs of the child, and in the mainstream classroom, or in sometimes it would be better suited for the child to have more of a separate environment, just really depending on what the child needed. So that was my beginnings, is really special education. And then from there, I was going to do my doctorate work in special education. I was going to go for that PhD, but I never quite got there because my husband said, let's get married. Yeah. Now my husband, he is a behavioral optometrist, and we did meet at Ohio State University. That's where I live in the state of Ohio. And at the time, he was still going to school because he was to be a doctor, and it takes a little while to do that. And I was like, okay, well, I'll go get my PhD. But he said, no, let's get married. So I said, well, what can I do? I've already been working through the Ohio Department of Education with the inclusion efforts, with creating, back in the 90s, we created the national IEP kind of thing. So everybody had the same IEP. So I was a part of that. And I wanted just a little bit more. So I decided I'll go into occupational therapy because OTs were inviting me in because they needed help too. And back at that time, OTs and PTs working in the school back then were very medical minded and didn't quite fit with the school-based approach. So I thought, well, I'll just go and learn another language and be that bridge. So I'll go learn the language of occupational therapy. I'll go back to the classroom. I'll be back in that environment, and I will be the bridge between medical model and really a more holistic school-based approach. But in my journey, I was doing all the neuroscience classes that I needed to take, and I started to discover the visual system in a different way. Now, my husband was a behavioral optometrist, so we really had these great discussions about how we learn to see and what is really vision. So I learned that vision is more than eyesight. So eyesight is really just one little skill. So how clearly you see something is a very small skill. And in fact, it's not really that important of a skill. You might go, oh, well, how am I going to read my book if I can't see it clearly? So there are many more skills that are more important, like periphery, understanding where the peripheral space is, and the ability to see and center at the same time as seeing in the periphery, or the ability to change your focus back and forth, but not just like, can I do it, but can I do it quickly and efficiently? not just can I do it quickly and efficiently, can I do it at the same time I see in the center and the periphery? And can I take what I see visually in the center and the periphery and correspond that to what my ears are hearing in their center and in their periphery? Can I balance and coordinate my body? And can I have a thought about it? So there are many more skills in seeing clearly. There's perceptual skills as well. Visual memory. Can I recall something I just saw later? Visual constancy, form constancy. If there's something that's kind of turned a different direction, can I still recognize what it is because it's upside down? And so, or to the side. A lot of different skills. So I decided, well, this is really intriguing to me. After my occupational therapy degree, I started working with my husband in our small practice in Northeast Ohio. Didn't take too long. I think my first two patients, one of them was a special needs case, and they thrived. And I said, okay, this is a big deal. I had a young girl too that was not classified as having any special needs, but she was about 17 years old, and she thought she was dyslexic. She came in thinking that, and we did our therapy, and mind you, that was my first day, so I wasn't that good yet. And here, after 8 weeks of therapy, she ended up passing her exams that she needed for scholarships and got a $20,000 scholarship to Case Western University in the Cleveland area. And so that I knew right away. And then you get the child that, maybe on their spectrum, and they've never hugged their mother.
Mhm.
And now they do. And now they want that affection, right? It just became just a snowball of success after success after success. Parents would tell me all the time, Patti, you're an OT. You do occupational therapy. I say, no, I am an OT. I did get that license, but I practice vision therapy. And they tell me, OT helped, PT helped, speech helped, therapy helped. You know it all does. These parents out there that are listening and watching today, they know all the incredible things that they did. But parents tell me time and time again, until we change the child's vision, we didn't really make the leaps and bounds. Once we change the child's vision, we really changed the whole path of their future. So that was so remarkable. I just had to keep doing this. So that's a little bit about how I started and how I ended up doing what we do now. We have 3 locations in Northeast Ohio, and we are an international office as well. We have patients that come to us either virtually or actually physically through the airplanes and airports and all that to our office to get the care that they need. It is really eye-opening.
Yes, I'm just absorbing every word you're saying because reflecting, and I can still, my hunch is still, of course, now my son's 30 years old and, successful story. He's independent, but he definitely, I think, would have benefited and still could from this vision therapy. So I am just like, I'm a sponge right now. And I have to remember I'm actually interviewing you. So I'm like, I want to just take notes. I was I think sharing stories of your experiences and your clients and also yourself really does connect with our listeners. So I was wondering if you would share some of the struggles that you personally had learning, growing up. I know you talked about it a little bit in your presentation. I was wondering if you would share that.
Yes. Well, I guess that's one of the reasons I have a passion for working with people that learn differently, because I certainly learned differently. When I was young, I could not read. Now, my mother was a special education teacher one day, and I went to school at the same school that my mother taught. And so, of course, if you think about that kind of relationship, I pretty much got away with everything, got passed along the system, even though I couldn't read. I was basically about 19 years old when I really could read. Actually, when I really started my journey and learning how to read. I did do quite well in school, but I can't be so proud of the way I went about learning or or getting good grades on tests. I kind of took a peek on other people's papers and did what I had to do to survive and protect my own self-esteem, because that,
Sure.
you're living with challenges and differences. You really do crumble inside and you feel like a very small person. And then how can you succeed and all that? Through time, I did manage to get through high school rather well. And then when I got to college, I was pretty scared because I knew how I got through elementary school. I knew how I got through high school. And here I needed to get through college. So I went to my university at Ohio State, and I would go to every teacher and I would say, can I have more time on tests? I diagnosed myself. I have dyslexia. So the teachers would say, sure, take more time on tests. And I would do really, really well because it took me that long, which now I know I couldn't organize my visions. I couldn't organize my eyes to put two eyes together and see clearly. For me, when I would look at paper, the words would kind of move on the page, like, a little bit. And then they would just kind of cycle right off. And I'd be looking at a white piece of paper. There was no words.
Wow.
Right.
And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it was very hard. And then, of course, when I was real little, I tried to tell my mom that I was struggling. My mom did take me to the optometrist. The optometrist said, oh, she just wants big girl glasses like her sister. She's fine. That optometrist was just looking at maybe the health of my eyes, yes. But they were just looking at, can I see clearly? And I could see clearly, like most children. Most children can see 20/20. It's not the issue. It's not why our children on the spectrum have problems with their visual system. It's not seeing clearly. Anyways, I became a nanny in college to help pay my way through college. And I was nannying these little girls. They were twin girls, 2 years old. And they asked me to read a book to them. Of course, I could read. So I pull out a book and I start just telling the story myself. I was making it up. And as smart as those little 2-year-olds were, they said, Miss Patti, you don't know how to read, do you? And
what? Really?
I'm 19. And how did these 2-year-olds call me out? Right? If they've been calling me out that fast, have I really been faking everybody else? Right? So the glass walls came down and I said, I'm going to learn to read. So I did go to I had a math teacher that said, no, you can't have more time on tests. Prove it. Prove that you have a disability. You need a label. Now, I personally think labels are for cans, but they do come in handy at times to get services. So I went to the disabilities department and I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And I did get more time on tests and I did graduate summa cum laude. So yeah, I did well. And yeah, it was a hard adventure, but
so inspiring though. Wow, what a story.
Yeah, so I made it through, but that hardship, that struggle really, I think, helps me make these connections.
Yeah.
Now, today I practice vision therapy. I am an OT, but I practice vision therapy. And I use my teaching background and I use my OT background, which has a lot of psychology courses in it, a lot of sensory information. But where I got my real understanding about how the visual system develops is through behavioral optometry.
Yes. And I know that if our listeners are going, oh my gosh, okay, can you tell us more about what that is?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about this because it is foundational. It really brings all these different therapies that parents are in, and it just brings them right into how vision should be leading, the leading sense. So out of all of our neurology, vision is about 80% of our sensory pathways. It's connected to 80%. And it's the one thing that very few parents even know, that they can go to a specialist that understands their child's vision. Arnold Gesell was a psychologist a long time ago. He said, to understand a child, you have to understand the child's vision. And of course, to understand the child's vision, you really need to understand the child. And along the time that Arnold Gesell lived, there was another man. His name was Dr. A.M. Skeffington, and he was a behavioral optometrist. Now, Dr. A.M. Skeffington, I told this story, he came up with a Venn diagram, which is really 4 circles kind of connected, all overlapping. So there's one kind of part in the middle of those 4 circles that all unite. the bottom circle for him was anti-gravity. And this is the baby coming out of the womb, lifting their head. And think about that. When you're a baby on the floor and you lift your head up only a few inches, what happens to your focusing system? When you learn to lift your head up further, you can see in the distance what changes in your focusing system. When you eventually learn the motor pattern of crawling on your belly, you're reaching out in space, right? And you're pulling with these fingers. And what are you doing? You're reaching for a goal in life. Maybe it's a bottle, maybe it's a mom or a dad or a friend, but you're reaching and pulling it into your life, right? But a good commando crawl, good belly crawl, you're also pushing with your legs and you're pushing through those hard times, right? Mm-hmm. So what your eyes are doing is your eyes are darting back and forth, right? And we learn to organize ourselves on our belly. We learn to push up on our hands and knees. We learn to crawl. Creep actually is what we call it. Eventually pull to stand, eventually walk. All the time, we've integrated our auditory system with the sounds, localized, oh, turn our head here, turn our head there. We developed our neck muscles to hold our head still so that we don't have a head tilt. And we've learned to use our bottom of our body at the same time we're using our top, so we don't just have to use one part of our body, and the left and the right. We've learned to integrate the tactile system. We've learned about any gut issues, because if there's a baby that's colicky or doesn't like to be on the tummy, number one thing, always go to the gut, right? So we've kind of working on that. When we rock back and forth on our hands and knees as a baby, we're changing our focus in and out, zooming like a camera lens. So all of those primitive movement patterns are really important. I've created a tower to talk about primitive reflexes. So this is my little tower demonstration. There's different reflexes that come in at a specific time in life. This one says fear paralysis, comes in at 5 weeks gestation approximately, should be matured by about 9 to 12 weeks, so that the more reflex can come in, and that's our fight or flight. But a lot of kids on the spectrum, they're stuck down here in fear paralysis. I'm not going out, I'm not doing that, or don't touch me, right? Mm-hmm. Or this fight or flight, they get very angry and they have outbursts, and right, they're stuck right here in this very primitive part of our brain. Well, life still goes, we still grow, we still have all these, but what happens is if we have some of these reflexes that are not well mature, everything else still gets built. All the skills that we still need to learn, but they're compromised, and some to a very great extent, and the nervous system becomes very disorganized. So I like to say I'm a clue finder. Families are my clue givers. I find the clues, I do testing, and then I find that reflex, and I put it through reflex movement patterns and specific with, here's my secret. This is what's different. There's a lot of great programs out there. So if parents are doing them, wonderful. But this is my secret. Vision being 80% of your sensory pathways, it has to be, you have to program the nervous system to make vision leading. If you don't have a behavioral optometrist that can really help with that organization of the visual system while you're doing a reflex program, it's not going to work as well. You're still going to have a dysregulated person. They're still not going to be well integrated, because those ears, those eyes, and the body have to be neurologically wired together. If we do different therapies and wire things apart, we're apart. But we want to set the stage for these neurons to discover each other so that we can be wired together. So that's what I do. And then I talked about the anti-gravity. There's also centering the eyes. That's learning how to move the eyes different directions, in, out, up, down, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's focusing. And then there's this other powerful bottom circle on the right side is our speech and language auditory system. The better we can communicate what we see, however we can, right? However we can get that out and express that, the better we're actually seeing, more vision. And that is mind, that is perception, that's brain. The eyes are actually an outgrowth of brain tissue. Your eyes are part of your brain. So the more brain development you get. So we tie all of those things together in our very special vision therapy program that we do.
I think that is, I'm sitting here thinking back a lot on how, when Joseph, like in the 90s, you were saying, we did all the therapy separate, exactly what you said. And then, how did we integrate it? Well, we really didn't. And I think that the expressive language, which was my son's greatest struggle, it, like, everything that you're saying makes complete sense. And how I wish, I would have known what I'm hearing today. But this is such great information. I think it is going to, well, I know it is and has changed so many lives. So I'm just fascinated with this. And I was with your presentation because it makes so much sense. And the way you're explaining it, and tell me where I'm wrong here, is that then those other therapies are going to make more sense.
Well, Bridget, you're not wrong. So when you guide vision and you really tap in, and there are some really great, phenomenal doctors out there that like to team with other practitioners and can really provide that support. But when you make vision leading, everything else just really explodes. And so our big referrals are obviously parents, right? Because they see that change. OT, PT, speech and language, they're all referring. Pediatricians, which you would think never would because they're very medical minded. I've got a lot of pediatricians that bring their own children. And once they really get what we do, pediatricians are now, okay. We used to, pediatricians actually, it's still a very common thing when a parent brings a baby to the pediatrician. I had a case actually early today, 17-year-old boy comes in, and he just got his diagnosis of autism in the last 4 years. So they diagnosed him as attention deficit problem. And the mom said, I kept trying to tell the doctors, like, he's not crawling normally. He's not engaging with the world the same way. Oh, he's got attention issues, which, okay, he did. But he had more deep issues. And mom was really kind of disappointed. She couldn't relate to different organizations. I asked her if she knew TACA, and she didn't know, so I'm putting her in touch with TACA. But she doesn't have any of the support system because she was misdiagnosed, because pediatricians think, oh, it's fine, they'll all develop their own way. And no, listen to mom or dad, grandmother, because they have that knowing. Remember, our children are really an extension of our own self.
Yes.
We know our kids, and it's hard when we feel our kids disconnected, but you're still connected, right? Like,
yes.
You're supposed to have a two-way street with your children, right? And it comes and goes. But with a child on the spectrum, you can be projecting out, but you don't necessarily feel that back at you, right? Or little glimpses here and there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and sometimes pediatricians just don't listen to those that know the most. And
it's still true. I mean, even that connection. When I coach moms, I'm constantly saying, let's go to your heart space. Like, you're the expert. You're the expert as the mom. Yes,
you are. And so I hope that there are pediatricians out there listening, because again, I find I am only a clue finder. I organize clues. I look at what the clues are. Basically, I think of a puzzle getting dumped out, and I look just like I would put a puzzle together. I look, this piece has this clue, and okay, where does it fit and when does it fit to this puzzle? We can have the right piece at the wrong time, right? The right intervention, but not quite right now. Doesn't mean it's a bad intervention. Even if you did it before, it might not have worked before, but now it does. Now it fits in your puzzle. But if we could get pediatricians to really understand that the parents have a knowing, they are the experts. They really are.
I love that. And yes, and I hope that message gets out there. And I think that that's also true for any of the professions, any pediatricians, some of the therapists that I've worked with, I would say, I kind of think but it's a real slowing down and listening ability, I think, from any practitioner. And so I love that you're bringing that up, because I think it is so important, and also for the parents to know and build their own confidence that they actually do, not to give up or just stop searching for the right person to help you.
Yeah, and I do want to give a good shout out to all your listeners that are professionals, whether they're in the therapy world or the medical world, because we actually have come a long way.
Yes.
There are a lot of, like I said, I have pediatricians do refer to me often, and it's because their eyes have been open, or they might have their own child that has grown up this way. So I really want to say thank you for those out there that are really helping us all help each other, because we're all gears working together in this world, right?
That
There's
is
not one
right.
better than the other. We just help each other along the way.
That is right. And yeah, I applaud them as well and thank them. And really, this is why I love these conversations, because we all grow from them, and we are all on the same team with,
Yes.
with the same intention behind it, which is helping our kids and also our adults, that are. I find that there are more adults coming, or that I have met doing this work now, who are being formally diagnosed. As a matter of fact, Joseph's girlfriend, when I met her, was like, I just wonder, and then we started visiting, and she went and she got her diagnosis, and sure enough, she's on the spectrum. And I just think that this is all part of it, these conversations to help anyone who's listening, who even thinks they might be on the spectrum, go find out if that's something that serves you. But I do want to talk about the fact that you are the founder of the Sensory Foundations program, which I'm going to let you explain it, because you're the founder. But I know that this is a huge piece. Like you say, you're putting these puzzles together for each individual that you meet with and help these families and these kids. So tell us about the Sensory Foundations program.
Yeah, so that is really a program, Neuromotor Sensory Foundations, that really bring all of the different sensory systems that have to connect to the motor systems, and then making vision the paramount leading sense. So we have, when we're born, we have a sensory neuron and a motor. I'm being very simplistic here, but for everything that we do. So even in our eyes, you see bright light, right? So that's, your brain has sensed it, right? There's bright light, but the motor system has to do something about it. So the motor system has to constrict the pupil so that not too much light comes in, right? Same thing with our ears. Sound comes in. My brain interprets there is sound present. My motor system has to coordinate the eardrum so that the message gets sent to the brain appropriately. If we have a really loose eardrum, the system isn't going to really get, the signals aren't really going to get to the brain as well. So it's going to be distorted. So thinking about that in every aspect, our skin, our smell, everything we do have, all our sensory systems actually have motor partners. So thinking from the reflexes up to gross motor to fine motor to super fine motor of the eyes and the language and the ears. That's one part of my triangle here. And then at the same time, the connection has to be together. So it can't be, I have a sensory thing happen and then, 2 minutes later, now's the motor response. It has to be simultaneous and synergistic. So in my Sensory Foundations program, I start at the primitive reflex level. I test a lot of primitive reflexes and postural control reflexes. And then I organize a program. And it's a 7-level program. And we set the stage for the neurons to discover, our sensory neurons and our motor neurons to discover with visual input, special tools like prisms and filters and different lenses that we use, and different colors of light that we use to stimulate these things. And we get those neurons to come together simultaneously and synergistically. And over 7 different levels of our program, at the end, we have very well matured primitive reflexes So some people might say is integrated. I call that a piece of maturity is the integration process, and integration should be with our other systems. So when you're at the 7th level, you're really working on very high level visual skills. So I do progress evaluations every 12 weeks, and I do a 2-hour assessment, and I can do that online remotely as well. So I do a 2-hour assessment, and even individuals with very challenging sensory or motor or behavior issues actually do quite well in a 2-hour evaluation. If I don't need the 2 hours, that's fine. But it actually works really nicely. And then we have a series of exercises. At level 1, you do these exercises, and you don't just pass to the next level. You have certain pieces actually happen. I have my 7-level program right here. So that's my 7-level program. So there are certain things that you have to do to get from one level to the next level. And eventually you get to 7 levels. And most of the time, on an average case, I say it takes 12 to 18 months to do that. It can be a lot faster for some, and it can be slower for others. But as long as we're making progress, that's the important thing.
So is it, do you notice that the majority of your patients who are on the autistic spectrum, your clients, is vision typically a part of this?
It's almost always, it's almost 100% of the time that there's some sort of delay. I can give you a couple resources I'd like to share. Pull them up here. Let's see if I can find them real quickly. So everybody obviously should know about TACA. That's a great organization to go to. But if parents are interested in learning more about vision therapy and how it can help individuals that are diagnosed with autism or somewhere on the spectrum, you might want to check out this book. It's by Melvin Kaplan. That's Melvin, and Kaplan, Kaplan. He's the author of 2 books. His first one was Seeing Through New Eyes, which talked about our tools of prisms and lenses. And then he wrote in 2015, he wrote a new book called The Secrets in Their Eyes, Transforming the Lives of People with Cognitive, Emotional, Learning, or Movement Disorders or Autism by Changing the Visual Software of the Brain. And so that's a really great book for you to look at. And there's another one I wanted to share with you. This is by a person who's no longer with us in our field of behavioral optometry, but what a great man this person was. And he really did do a lot to make us really think outside the box of how vision develops. And his name was Dr. Harry Wax. So he was a behavioral optometrist, and before he passed, he was part of writing a book called Visual Spatial Portals to Thinking, Feeling, and Movement, Advancing Competencies and Emotional Development in Children with Learning and Autism Spectrum Disorders. So there's 2 books that I think every family should look up. Now, there are some other things that are helpful. I've written a book called Indicators of Primitive and Postural Reflexes. It's an assessment tool. It's called the IPRA, and it is currently on a pre-sale, but some of your listeners will listen to this much later. It should be out by the end of December. And that really is a great assessment tool for helping families test for reflexes. So what I tried to do is create a standardized tool that anybody can look at, learn how to give a test to know whether reflexes are matured or how much more mature are they this time than the last time, regardless of what program you've put them in. Because sure, I'm always going to say that vision is the best, right? That's my passion. I believe it to my core that the eyes are the window into the soul, right? And
Yes.
so for me, vision is the place. You start with the gut and you go to vision. That's how I think. But of course, there are a lot of other great programs out there, and maybe they also mature the nervous system, right?
Yes.
You yourself know that you've taken your son to many great therapists and doctors through the years. So even a parent could read through this, learn how to test, and then just, test and see, are there changes in how, their children are functioning, how your even adults because all of us have some immaturity in our nervous system. We have our own personal quirks. So.
Yes. And I love that you've written that, because I live in a rural setting, and certainly when Joseph was smaller, I did a lot of things. I would just try to find whatever I could do myself. And a lot of the therapies were from therapists, but I actually was a practitioner,
Right. Yeah.
And
So
then,
this,
yeah.
yeah. So I love this because it's the first book out there that's got, I put in little video clips. Okay. So real testing. So
Oh,
somebody can go and watch a video and see how to test and see, am I doing it like that? Of course, everybody's going to respond a little differently, but I also put a list of possible abnormal responses, because when you're first trying something, you don't know what's normal. Is that good? Is that, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do, right? So I've
right.
created lists of, I mean, there's always something I haven't thought of, right? That's not in the list, but a good number of things that are abnormal to look for. So it gives
Mhm.
parents and practitioners that are just starting on their adventure, or doctors, I hope families purchase the book and give a gift to their eye doctors. And by the way, I'm not making money on that book. I should have said that in the beginning. That is going to the OEPF Foundation, where you can buy the book if you wanted to do it. So I'm not soliciting my book. There are other books out there that are great. So
Yeah. Well, I think it's perfectly fine to solicit your book, because it's needed, because that was what I was going through, because as a parent, it's like, okay, I can almost hear the questions, like, although nobody's even heard this episode yet, I could hear him saying, well, how do I know? Like, what do I look for? What are the steps that I need to take to help my child? And how do I know? How do I know what to do? Who do I do? So there's that overwhelm and stress that comes with knowledge, right? So that's what I do. I help them break it down. So that is perfect. That book, so parents can actually purchase it and go, okay, this is what I need to look for. This is how
exactly.
to do it. That's beautiful.
And don't we teach each other? I mean, how many times have we helped our professionals around us so that they know what to look for themselves, right? So there is another book now this one's really pricey, but it is also just released. It's Applied Concepts in Vision Therapy 2.0. It's meant for the eye doctor, but there's a lot of information in here about how visual skills develop. And if somebody is seeing a eye doctor, but they don't have a vision therapist or a vision therapy eye doctor on staff, maybe the eye doctor could purchase this book. I do have a very extensive chapter in that book about primitive reflexes and how each primitive reflex actually, I say, is like a seed that grows up to a visual skill. So they all have a vision outcome, every one of our primitive reflexes. And so maybe if families could clue their eye doctors into that book, Applied Concepts in Vision Therapy 2.0, maybe those eye doctors can learn a little bit more too about all this.
Right. So I'm going to ask this on behalf of the questions I feel like people are going to have. If you're just learning that vision, is such a huge, or like you said, gut then eyes, what to break it down for a parent, what's the first thing we should do once we realize, oh my gosh, I need to have my child checked? Find somebody that does what you do. Do you find you?
Yeah. Well, you can find me too. My email is patty@sensoryfocus.com. That's sensory, SENSORY, focus, like your eyes, FOCUS.com. That's my personal email. You can call my office. That's the Vision Development Team. And you can find my email or my website by going to sensoryfocus.com, and you'll find the Vision Development Team there. But there's a couple other resources, because that's not always practical to come out this way, or sometimes we are so backed up with people needing to come in that it's hard to get a spot in our office. So there might be something else you could do. You could go to the College of Optometrists in Vision Development, that's covd.org, and they have a locate a doctor on theirs. And another one you can go to is oepf.org, and that's actually where you probably would find that book, the IPRA, by going to oepf.org. And that website will also have a locate a doctor. Now, sometimes there's very few, far between, and this is a very large nation, and this is also international. So if you have listeners from around the world, you can go to those two websites and you can find a practitioner in your country or in your locale. So they are all around the world and you can find help. So do that. But if they're very far away from you, like 2, 3, 4 hours, I'm going to say do it anyways. It can really open up your eyes, and just getting the evaluation, because again, if we remember what Arnold Gasell said, to understand the child's vision, you have to understand the child, and understand the child, you have to understand the child's vision. If we don't understand the child's vision, we really don't have a good grasp of what that individual is dealing with, and how hard they are working just to get through a day or a session or a 5-minute period, right? Sometimes it's just so overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I would recommend you make the flight, make the drive, do it anyways, get the assessment. If anybody is looking on those websites, I would look for somebody that has an FCOVD after their name. F as in Frank, because that tells you that they are a fellow of the College of Optometry and Vision Development, which means that they've gone that extra mile to get more information and how to work with individuals with special needs, whether they have any kind of disorder on the spectrum or any other delay or brain injury or whatever learning difference that they may have. Those doctors have gone that extra mile to become a fellow. So it wasn't easy. Another place that families could look, especially if there's a brain injury component, is the NORA, Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association. So that's NORA, and I believe it's .com, but you'll have to check that. Put in NORA and then always put in vision and you'll get the right place. But they also have a located doctor, and those practitioners are holistic in the sense that they're not just eye doctors. That group is all kinds of therapists that work together for the goal of improving visual outcomes.
Yes, those are all such great resources. And I think it's important to share resources so that families, that anyone who's listening can find the help that they need for their child. Because I have so many flashbacks, and you come from education as well. You understand that, there's so many teachers who think a child's not paying attention. That happened to Joseph a lot, where in fact, he heard everything and understood everything, but it just the way he processed visually and auditorily, like you said, it's all integrated, just didn't fit the standard classroom.
Yeah.
So we're all learning. And so you're the bridge between the medical community and you do such a good job with that. And I'd like to see the educational system also embrace how our inclusion for our kids with disabilities, and really help our teachers understand and learn and know what to look for as well. So thank you for those reasons.
Teachers and our peers. So I asked the young gentleman that I had this morning, the young adult, and I said, I'm going to be doing a podcast today. Is there anything you think parents or listeners should know? And he said he often feels isolated and lonely because he's so misunderstood. And I think we forget about that, but everybody looks at him as he's so different, he's so odd. People just don't know how to really accept each other. But yet, if he goes to a social experience with other individuals with special needs, it's no problem. They all accept one another, right? So we have a lot to go with peer groups in the mainstream population, not only the teachers, but sometimes the teachers are the leaders for the negativity. They don't mean to, but they just don't understand that that's their way of learning. They are listening. They are holding it together. This is their best day. Embrace it, because as this young man said, there's some really great gifts he loves about his way of being, because he sees things that no other person can really understand the way he can see it.
Boy, that is a powerful message. And I'm so thankful that you are sharing that, because I know so many of the kids and young adults that I visit with are really struggling or have struggled with self-esteem. And so there's, Joseph, my son, always talks about that what he appreciated so much is that we weren't trying to change him, the person. We were just helping him to better function in this world and society. So I think really true acceptance is honoring the differences and seeing what a gift that those differences actually are to all of us.
Exactly. That's the message, right?
Yeah, because I've grown so much as a person. I'm so thankful that even with all the challenges, that I would not be who I am today without my son and all these other folks that I have the honor of interviewing. So it's so appreciated. So thank you for that message.
You're welcome. I share it. I'm the messenger for his words. So yeah.
Well, is there anything else you want? I mean, that's going to be hard to top, but I really seriously could talk to you all day. So I know we visited just a little bit before we started recording. Hopefully you'll come back, but until then, is there anything you'd like to mention before we go?
I think we've said quite a bit today, so I'm good. I just really want to say again, thank you for the opportunity. I really do love sharing my passion, and this is such a life-changing thing when you address the visual system. And when you address the visual system with the whole componentry, from the primitive reflexes to the speech and language and the auditory, but you really make the visual system the guide of all that. It guides our posture, it guides our emotions, it guides our thoughts. And if we can change vision, we really do have a brighter future. So very nice. Thank you again so much for having me on today. I very much appreciate it.
Well, I will reach out to you, and I know our listeners are going to want more from you as I do. So thank you again. And for our viewers and our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode of A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast, please like and subscribe so we can get our message of knowledge, hope, and inspiration out into the world. Be safe and stay well.